So first, thanks for taking the time out of your schedules to come hear some of the work that I'm doing. And also, if it was me that brought you here, awesome. If it was the pizza, great. If it was both, then that's a win-win, right? I'll take it. So I'm going to talk about ecotourism and outdoor recreation as a catalyst for rural development. And how I'm going to go about that, I'm going to kind of just briefly contextualize ecotourism. I'm going to talk about the outdoor economy, and I'm going to talk about how all this can make a difference by giving us some community profile. I'm going to introduce two active projects right now. If I can get past this point, I'm going to call it a success in terms of our time today. But if not, we're going to spend some time up there because that's kind of at the forefront of what's kind of leading some of the charge. And then there's a couple other great opportunities that's being led. This is being led by Ted Welser in one of the county commissioners, and this is being led by Jesse Powers, and I'm also involved, and we've got a grad student that's interested in that project as well. So, ecotourism, it's a relatively new term. It's been in practice for quite some time, but it was first utilized as ecotourism in 1973 in Canada, but it wasn't really used in our common vernacular and even defined until 1985. So ecotourism has been in practice, but we haven't necessarily defined it or used it as a field of study. And that's the umbrella in which this is all kind of coming through. There's three contexts that we like to talk about when it comes to ecotourism. The social cultural, that's about the local people, the local culture, respecting them, incorporating them, having their voices at the table. Also, we look at an environmental perspective, and that's through environmental protection, environmental advocacy, conservation, the ideas of conservation and preservation. And then it has to have some economic sustainability and benefit for the communities. So we can't go in, spend the money, and then just take it out. That doesn't do much for the communities. We've seen that. We've seen it a lot locally, right, with extractive industries. And so this is kind of a counter to that, and it's become a very modern counter to some of that. So how does this all fit in my world? I kind of look at it in terms of, we have this parks and rec, right? You think about community parks, and there's been a recent study by our national association looking at the economic benefits of local parks. They actually call it economic activity. So it's the money that's spent around our local parks. And it's $158 billion is what they were estimating last year in our economy as a result. We're also looking at our outdoor recreation and education piece. And that's kind of thinking about programming, adventure sports, adventure activities, those can kind of fall into that. And then commercial recreation and tourism. This is kind of how do we get people here, how do we give them the services that they need. And so when we bring those together, that gives us around this nature-based recreation. And this is kind of the center of some of the work that I'm working on. It's how to bring those three pieces together around nature-based recreation. So the outdoor economy, this is what we know. This was, the top part was in 2015. It's basically saying it was $887 billion in annual consumer spending. That's quite a large number in terms of what it brings. Most recently, this came out of the GDP from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. Those numbers are slightly different. This is showing at $373 billion. This is more direct spending. Okay, that is on goods and services directly related to outdoors, where this accounts for the trickle down. So I buy a bike, I go use a bike, I pay a guide, then I need to eat and sleep as a result of that. And so this doesn't account for the eating, sleeping parts or the apparel parts, where this kind of looks at it more globally, more holistically. So you're trying to understand that. What they're saying right now, even without the rest of it, we're over 2% of the entire GDP. This is the preliminary results. They're actually kind of tweaking it now to make sure it's kind of accurate. What we also know, and this came from the same study, 2015, we're seeing $24 billion in Ohio. We're seeing 215,000 jobs. This is more than auto manufacturing. Wow. right? The difference, though, is it doesn't talk about the type of job, right? And so we can get into some nuances there. But we're still trying to basically say that we have a significant place at the table, right, from an economic standpoint. And I'm going to give you some more information about that as well. So let's bring that locally. Let's talk about our local economic profile. I think most of you might be aware of this, but I've lived here for over 13 years. And once I dove into numbers, you always hear that it's bad, but when you dive into the numbers, it actually gets a little bit more heartfelt. And so this came from the Appalachian Regional Commission. This is a federally mandated commission that oversees the Appalachian region as a whole. And so what they do is they look at all the Appalachian counties each year, and they put them on 5 different levels, right, or designations. We are listed as distressed Athens County, which is the lowest level. It's good from getting money, but it's really bad from what it means. And this is how they came up with it. The 3-year average unemployment rate, we're about 1.3% above the state average. When we're looking at per capita market income, we get a little bit scarier story. We are significantly below both the state and the national level. And then our poverty rates. This is where it really kind of starts hitting home, is that we are basically double the state and national average. This is what we know, but this is a story that we have to understand. We're seeing that our county economy is growing at 6%, but we also know that the state was growing at 18% during that time frame. So we're seeing growth, just not what the state is doing. And these are our largest sectors as well. From a health, I think this is also where it gets a little bit scary as well. What we're seeing, this is from the 2016 County Health Assessment, is we're seeing, and I'll just kind of go through some of this, 53% of our population is obese or overweight. 53%. Poor mental health, at least one day. Almost 60% of our residents in one day out of 30 are saying that they feel like they are in poor mental health. That's the lowest that they can rank themselves. Right? Same thing from 50% for physical health. And for me, this is where it really kind of hurts just a little bit. 50% say there wasn't a safe place for the kids to play. 50%. This is the story in which we're looking at. Out of this, we start thinking about, okay, this isn't where we want to be and we know it. So then how do we start looking at our assets and how do we start incorporating ideas of change to provide, to potentially retell our story, to change our story, not retell, let's change our story. And so what we're looking at is we have in these communities, and I'm specifically talking about in Athens, when you look at the comprehensive plan that was done of Athens, there was a lot of, they basically said our natural resources is arguably our greatest asset, right? Not just for enhancement of tourism activities, but for quality of life. We have an abundance of it, an abundance. We also are 25 minutes from a state park and area that sees over 5.5 million visitors. That's the Hocking Hills. 5.5 million, that's more than Yellowstone National Park. Okay? 25 minutes from here. We have access to a brilliant local rail trail that's going to be incorporated to this property. And this is the Chansey Village Park, if you can't see that. And then we have a lot of community support for this, and I'll share with you how that's coming along. On top of that, this property is within 150 miles of 15 million people. That's a lot of people, okay? That's a day drive, right? Easy overnighter, good weekend experience. Okay, so I built you up a little bit. So this is one of the ways that we're looking to address some of this, and this has been a part creepy lights, is that it's been one of the ways in which we're trying to take and address some of these issues. And so this is what we're proposing. It's an 86-mile multi-purpose human-powered trail system. And we're thinking about, we're going to have it mountain bike optimized, and what that basically means is that our trails are good for everybody, but we're going to do some special features in it to make it very appealing for mountain bikers. It doesn't change the experience of hikers, runners, backpackers, but by intentionally designing it with the mountain biking experience in mind, we can really make a difference. We're looking at trailhead in Chansey, Doneville, and Bookville. We're still working on Nelsonville. We're actually having a meeting in 2 weeks with them to try to see if we can get some of their buy-in to get something a little bit closer. One of the key pieces of this, when you look at our local inventory of trails, we have a lot of intermediate. We have advanced trails that have been developed, if you will, but not intentionally. We don't have a ton for advanced riders, and we have one trail that I would consider somewhat beginner. We don't have it. We know the entry point is here. So we're going to focus on building beginner trails, and then we are doing 59% of it's going to be intermediate and 23% is advanced, knowing that those percentages are going to change once they start getting shaped and crafted. Here's some of the history of this. In 1994, it was actually recommended to develop mountain bike trails. Since 1994 and about 2 years ago, there was zero movement on that. Nothing happened. Okay, federal government, right? Tony Scardina came in, and he's just a great guy, and some of his visions for it. They reach out to the Athens Bicycle Club to discuss forest and club relations holistically. That's when Peter Katzis became involved in the Athens Bicycle Club. Out of that this is where I came in. I was at the very first meeting when the Forest Service, International Mountain Bike Association, some people from Combo, which is Columbus Mountain Biking Group, and some others sat in a room, and maps were laid out on the table and said, this is the area in which we're thinking about developing this. What do you think? And we're just like, it's right by Athens, right by Nelson, right by Chansey, right by 33, and it's a large piece of land. And their next response to us was, do what you want. There's no trails on it now. Make it as good as it can be. And we're like, huh? And Andy Williamson, who's been doing this all over the country for over 8 years with International Mountain Biking Association, he's like, there's 6 areas in the country that have this potential. 6 areas that have this type of potential, blank slate, go for it. Of course, and then they followed, then their last thing was like, are you sure this is the best piece of property? We can look at others. We're like, nah, this will do great, this is fine, we're on it. And so that was kind of this movement, and that kind of sent us off to the races. We signed an agreement with them to administer trail designs. This is where I spent most of my time in the beginning, was really helping crafting the RFP to try to bring in trail designers. There's people with PhDs, and that's one of the people we brought in, that work on geospatial analysis is really their expertise. And they came in, and I talked to about 8 different trail designers, and we got the 2 best in the country to do this. Part of that was through personal relationships. They also believed in the project, and they're still with us today. And so that's where I spent a lot of time. Peter really took this one and raised about $40,000 to do the master plan. And as part of that, that was also $30,000 or some money for actually designing the first 30 miles. We held public meetings to receive input, and then they did 36 miles that actually got cut down to 31 miles for phase 1 and 2, with over 625 volunteer hours to do that. So that was what we originally, and we kept saying, if we get 30 miles on the trail, we'll celebrate it. A few other things I'll talk about kind of changed the course of this project. And Peter and I and Dawn always just joke that we're just kind of along for the ride, trying to figure it out at this stage. And so in 2017, a partnership between Wayne National Forest and the College of Arts and Sciences allowed for an environmental assessment. And what that basically, they had to do a biological, cultural, and a wildlife assessment to make sure you're not going to do any damage to this. And if so, what is it? And then you reroute trails. As part of that, then you do a public scoping process where you engage the public, say this is what's happening, you allow for public comment. The one thing I learned from this is that they listen. We moved trails, we lost 5 miles of trail as a result of it, didn't lose it. It helped the local landowners, and it helped us. And so it becomes a win-win. So they really paid a lot of attention to what that meant in order to have buy-in from the communities. We got the final master plan in 2018, and then we've started to quantify it with quantified ventures, which I'll talk about what that is. That's a really unique opportunity to try to pay for this thing. And then just recently, this thing has gained so much momentum. The National Forest Service came up with $40,000 for us to flag the rest of the 55 miles. The College of Arts and Sciences are going to have 6 interns doing the environmental assessment, because you have to by federal law. That's going to be finished by the end of this summer, and we're expected to have a sign-off and be 86 miles of shovel-ready project by the end of the summer. In our world, this is lightning fast. Anytime we talk about this, people are like, "You've done what? How quickly?" Like, they just don't believe it. They don't believe it. And that is not a result of any single person. It's a lot of people spending energy, willing to problem solve, and have a belief that this can actually make a difference in our community. So, through all that, we came up with these project goals after the meetings, and these have held true since day one. And these are what I truly believe in. This is why this project. Sure, personally, I want to bike and trail run and hike and backpack more, right? I want that. But this is how it can make a difference. From a tourism standpoint, mountain bikers, they will travel. They'll travel average of 3 days at a time. They'll travel up to 566 miles when they travel, and they'll spend $382 per trip. They're willing to travel for good trails. Business attraction, and I'm going to talk more about that tourism in just a little bit. Amazon, they're saying they need access to outdoor recreation for HQ2. That is a requirement. That's what they want, access to it. That's one of the criteria for it. So businesses, a study just came out of Northwest Arkansas that kind of helps confirm this. And this is Walmart in Bentonville, Arkansas. Walmart, one of the largest companies in the world, were having trouble attracting and retaining, the young, tech-savvy, millennials. They couldn't keep them in Bentonville. There wasn't a lot in Bentonville. And so how do you do it? They developed a vibrant art scene. One of the daughters of Walton is a big art person. It's one of the finest fine arts museum in the world for free. So they do that. They put a lot of money in their downtown, and they built trails using bike path type greenways and building mountain bike trails off of that. And I'll tell you the story of what kind of happened, and it's turned into this mecca for biking and tourism as a result. Health and wellness. Morgantown, a lot like Athens, 6% of trail users report exercising more regularly once they start using trails. 23% did not exercise regularly before they had access. That can change the game. In addition, Northwest Arkansas, this is a study that just came out. 27% of locals rode bikes 6 or more days in the last year, 11% higher than the national average. This led to approximately $86 million in annual health benefits. That calculation has some interesting figures in it and how they came out, but it's basically about exercise. The more you exercise, the less you're going to spend on healthcare costs, is really what it comes down to. Community connectivity and pride. Rural, this was a greenway trail system, basically said that trails have had a positive influence on their community, and they have a sense of community pride as a result of trails. That's what Seth was talking about in the video. And then Northwest Arkansas. Many residents cite proximity to bicycle infrastructure as a major consideration and when they're deciding where to live, work, and locate businesses. Right? So it is changing the courses of this. This is the data to support what I've experienced in my travels. You go to these small mountain towns, it doesn't take much to change the direction of those places. So this is kind of our partners in this project. Ohio University has continued to step in. Patton College has also been very supportive of the work on this. But we've got the Visitors Bureau, we've got USDA Rural Development, and this list is getting updated every day. It's constant. People are now trying to find how can they connect to it. They're just seeing the momentum and the potential of this. And this has been, hands down, this is why we are where we are today, is because of this network. Because people love the fact that it's grassroots that's coming from it. So, what does it all look like? This is the spur. This is kind of where it is. This is a 9,000 acre piece of property that is right outside of Chansey. This is the village park right there. This is their main street right there. What we're trying to do is Jessie Powers. Does anybody know Jessie? She's the county planner. She gets it. She's young. She's energetic. She within 3 months of her being here, she finished a grant to do a bike spur from the bike path, the Hockocky Medina Bikeway, to the village of Chansey. That's our trailhead. That's going to be their trailhead as well. We didn't plan that. We'd like to pretend we did, but it just kind of happened. We were at a meeting and we're like, that's your trailhead? That's your? Awesome. And that's been a really unique piece to this. They've got funding for phase 1, and funding for phase 2 has been applied for, and we're the person who administers those grants is one of our partners in the project. I think it's going to get funded. Here's Athens, here's some Sells Park, we've got Doneville, Bookville up there, and then we've got Nelsonville. So you can see it's really about being connected to the community. In addition, this is our overall trail map. This just came out 2 days ago. This is the updated map. What we're basically seeing, this is phase 1 here, and this is the rest. This is all green is beginner trails, the blue is intermediate, and the red is advanced trails. We didn't know if this landscape would carry advanced trails until about 2 weeks ago. And they said that this area and this is perfect. This is going to be a hub where you're going to get some really great downhill experiences, and then you can climb back up, and then you can continue on down. So it's going to be a really unique type of experience that we're going to have here as well. We're still working on an official trailhead here and here. We know that we've got trailhead here. And then this is a gravel trail. This is basically a flat trail for ADA accessibility. It's about over about a mile, so people can just do kind of that walk and still be in nature. That's about a 26-acre part of the property. And it's on private land. So this is phases 1 and 2, and then the remaining 55, which you can see is the dotted lines are phase 2, solids phase 1, and the rest. This is what we were originally targeting, but we've kind of changed the course. That's still our low-hanging fruit that we're trying to go for, but we're also working with Quantified Ventures and some other partners to do the whole thing. And I'll talk to you about why that's interesting. So, how does this all change the course of an economy, right? We talked about the outdoor economy earlier, right? And we know that people will spend money on it. But let's talk about mountain biking. What we're seeing is an annual consumer spending, $133 billion. Again, this is what I talked about earlier. So again, mountain bikers are willing to travel. Let's give you 2 examples. Pisgah and Nantahala in western North Carolina. This study came out back in the fall, and they're seeing 30.2 million annually in visitor spending, right? That's outside coming in. That's economic impact. Right? Economic activity is money circulating within the community. Economic impact is money coming from outside. We're seeing some job creations, we're seeing income, and then this is what local residents in western North Carolina are spending. Northwest Arkansas saw 90,000 bike tourists and 27 million annually. Okay, and money coming from outside, and then 21 million additional from Northwest Arkansas residents. So I'm just trying to tell the story is that it can have real significant economic impacts. This area is no different. The topography is the same, the elevations, the rural nature of it. They don't even have a university that's close. It's a little bit further away. And they don't have 15 million people within 150 miles. So we have something. Okay, so this is what it needs in terms of this is just phased out, but low cost estimates are about 2.3 million. High estimates to build it all is about 4 million. That is a significant amount of money. It is. When you look at it in comparison to paved trails, you are looking at about 100,000, give or take, per paved mile of trail. This isn't that expensive in the grand scheme of it all, for what you can get in the economic value. So how do I know that? Well, we're working with this company called Quantified Ventures. This is a new model. We were selected out of 13 different proposals from around the country. We got out places in Utah, Colorado, Lake Tahoe. And it was because our project was so far along and we had community partnerships. What they basically did, the National Forest Foundation is a nonprofit arm of the National Forest Service. They can do things the National Forest Service can't because of federal limitations. So what they basically have done is they want to say the federal government can't appropriate spendings based on future budgets. So even if the Forest Service believed in this, they can't say, well, we're going to give you all that money because that would be on future budgets. So how do you do that? So that's where Quantified Ventures. We are looking at we're the pilot program for this idea of pay for success. It took me a long time to understand what it is. But basically what you have a certain amount of investors, just like you would invest in a company, stocks, or anything, or a project, same idea. Quantified Ventures was founded on, we are seeing the largest transfer of wealth that we've ever seen, from baby boomers to the kids. There's this different set of values that we have now in our generations, is that what we're seeing is that they want to not only make money on their money, they also want to do some type of social good. That's called social impact investing. That is taking roots pretty deep to the point of the ARC funding is now asking for social impact leverage. First time they've ever done that in 8 years. Okay? So what they're trying to do is have investors come in, and then you are going to have a project. This is the Bailey's project. This could be someone from Goldman Sachs. It could be someone from here. It could be anyone. It could be one of you if you have a large bank account. But we have that, and then you have this payees. These are people that see the value in this. They say, well, if we can build it, we are going to be able to, and we measure the metrics in which the investors, the project, and the payees agree on. If you meet those, then you get your money back in a set amount of return with a set amount of interest, right? We do this all the time. Think about your bank and home loan type, experience. And so this is how this is kind of playing out right now. And so we think we can get investors. We're almost positive. This is the one that's tough, right? Who's going to pay for it? This is how it's played out in other areas. Meals on Wheels. We know that Meals on Wheels serves a fringe group, right? Not in a bad fringe, but they are older. They typically are economically challenged. When they can't get food, they can't take care of themselves, where do you think they go to solve that problem? The hospital. Absolutely. They go to the hospital. They go to the ER. ERs are very expensive to go to. So if we can divert them from there by providing them access to food and some other resources, we can divert that. That means healthcare, because those people don't have the money to pay for the hospital visit. So what does the hospital tend to do? Write it off. Insurance companies write it off. So what they basically have shown that if we invest $3 million into Meals on Wheels, we can save $7 million. This happened in Louisville. Quantified Ventures did that agreement, right? So they're trying to apply this to recreation. It's never been done before. If they know if they can pull it off here, they can pull it off anywhere, because we don't have the largest employers who? Yeah, that's a tough sell, right? And so how do you do that? Can you look at can you look at tax base? Can you look at increased hotel stay rates? Can you look at sales tax? All of that can stay, more in that local level. And so that's where we're kind of having those conversations. I'm not. Seth is. The Seth that was in there that talked about people in place, guy is brilliant. And he believes in the project. And he's done arguably more research, I would argue right now, in the economic impact of trail systems. His spreadsheet is amazing. And his philosophy is, how wrong can we be and still be right? And he's like, we can be really wrong in our projections and still be really, really right. And that's a powerful thing. And I'll talk to you about where that comes in. So I think this is just a cool idea that's happening as part of this project. So, potential economic impact. Seth has his. I didn't put it up here because you would have to kind of explain it. And I've spent a ton of time in the economic impact world recently. And I can talk about it, but to try to explain how this model is going to play out is a little bit tough for me. But what we basically did, this was Dawn McCarthy and I kind of put this together, is we did the Outdoor Resident Recreation Survey. even if we get, right, and what we're looking at, 25,000 visits, this is what they're saying that they spend. This is what the total spending would be. Okay, that's 1 year. If we get to a high, we can get up to 4 million in spending per year. That's in food, gas, lodging, experiences. We also, if you take a look at the Wayne National Visitors, these are people that visited Wayne. If we want to get a low estimate of 16, we can see 1.8 million all the way up to 5 million, right? And this was the number that they were spending here, so it's a little bit higher. So even if we get a low, Seth right now is projecting that if we, in 5 years, we could potentially see up to 160,000 visitors, both day and overnight visitors here. That's not far off from what some of the other places are saying. World-class, and what they've done, they've categorized world-class destinations all the way down to just local destinations. We are one step up from local, and we will still hit our targets and our economic impact. The cool part about his model, he's shown a very little recapture rate because we're rural. Just because this money's spent here doesn't mean it stays here. It goes out. That's where economic impact studies get really messy. But we've been very conservative, and we've done a 54% recapture rate. That's very low. I haven't seen one study come out that has a 54% recapture rate of money that actually stays in the community that's spent. So we're being very conservative in this. Questions? I know I've just been going, but about economic.
I had a question about quantified mentors.
Yeah.
You said you submitted a proposal to them, so do they are doing this work pro bono, or do you have to?
No, they're being paid by the National Forest Foundation.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're saying if we can pull it here, they will have work for life. Because, I mean, we're already getting calls. How does that work with you guys? What's your partnership like? What's that mean? So yeah, so that's their place into it, but they're being paid by National Forest Foundation. Yeah.
So do you pay the Wayne National Forest whenever you go on there to use the bike trail?
No, well, you used to, but one of the things that's happened since Tony Scardini has come into play is they've taken a look at it, and what they're basically finding is very little money is coming in from permitting, and it also just closes off access. Let's go back to those health numbers, right? It's surrounding the poorest in our community, in our county, and they have to pay to go on it. It doesn't make sense. So they're actually making a recommendation to remove those, and in the meantime, he put a moratorium on all fees. He gets it. He gets it. He understands. There is going to be a fee for ATV use, but they're reducing it, I think, from like $35 to like $30 or $25. So they're reducing those, and they're going to get rid of hiking and biker fees because we need people on it.
How you get numbers of visitors?
So this came from a study that was done at the Ohio level, basically about the number of visitors, and we took a small percentage, and this one's based on actually people who say that they bike, they mountain bike, and then we took it's like a pretty conservative estimate of that percentage-wise. This was actually based on the people that say they come to Wayne and they've biked in their visitor use survey. So, great question. This is the hardest number you will ever see. If you ever read economic impact studies, question this number, right, the visitors. Question it every time because it's the hardest number to come up with. Cool? Okay, so what we know about mountain bikers, and this is where I get pretty excited, is that we know that mountain bikers like to sit in campground, hotels, they'll stay with friends, motels, cabins. We also know they like to eat hamburgers, pizza, they like to drink beer. We're good at beer here. Guess what else we're really good at? All of these, right? I mean, we might be the capital of all of that per capita of those things. We're good at it, okay? What do they like to do? They like to hike. Well, they like to drink. We're seeing a trend here. They like to camp, they like to swim. God, guess what we have? We have 2 lakes really close by, right? We have some decent fishing. They can kayak on the Hocking River. So we have all of these in place of things they like to do when they're not biking. They'll travel as well. This is some more data. Multiple weekends, 30% of them. Multiple weeks, 13%. They bring their family. We love it. They also like just to travel without their family. They like to enjoy nature, escape everyday life. I'm going to say that's part of why we live in Athens, right? We have a bubble that really, it is part of our everyday life, but we have a unique culture and experience here. People love Athens. They just do. They like to do it for excitement and improve skills. This is how we're thinking about it in designing trails. This is the types of trails that they like to use. This is how we're thinking about how we're building our trails and designing. They like shared use, so we want trail runners, we want nature watchers, we want backpackers out there. They'll help for trail development. We've seen that. They don't like to pay for trail maintenance, but they like to pay for development. And so we're starting to see that as well. So how does that all relate to tourism development? These are some opportunities that we have here, and we're actively working on it. It's from a marketing standpoint, right? The Winding Roads has a piece in this. Think about this as that downtown. But what do we have here that people love? We have brilliant food. It's local food, right? We have our favorites. Others who come here have their favorites. When the alumni come back, what do they say? Oh, I got to go eat here, I got to go eat there, I got to go eat there. That's how they plan their trip. We have it. Art and music scene is really brilliant. We've got Stewart's Opera House. It's just one example of great art and music that we have going. Our culture. Anybody here done the Little Cities of Black Diamond tour? Once you do that, it changes your perception of what this area means. I lived here for 12 years before I went on it, and I was floored about what the history of this area is. This is a way to celebrate that, right? To tell that story, which I think is important. I know Ken has a deep love for that as well. We also have great, again, I talked about music, even with the opportunities that we have. Entrepreneurship and business development. Rural Action's at the table with us, AceNet's at the table with us, and you got to think about when you have this as your unique, right? We also have Mulberry Gap as an example, but you have cabin rentals. I have those figures of how many cabin rentals we have, but again, if we have the ability to create multiple day itineraries and opportunities. So you're going to come bike with us, you're going to come bike, but you're going to have some drinks. We know they like to drink, so let's utilize it. We also know that as part of these multiple day itineraries, not only do you have riding at the potential Bailey's track, you've got Stroud Run Sells Park, you've got Lake Hope, you've got an hour away, you've got the Marietta, what's happening there. You've got another hour and 20 away, you've got Great Seal State Park. So within an hour and 20 minutes, you've got almost 200 miles, not counting this, to ride. We can capitalize on that. We don't market it, and so that's a piece, that's that marketing piece. There's a focus on special events. We're already seeing, if you try to get into one of Michael Owens, one of our proud alumni, you can't get into one of his events. They sell out 300 people, 300 runners are signing up for his events. Right? The best part about special events is people bring money in from outside that normally wouldn't be here. That's where economic impact makes a difference. Dirt Rag, Pennsylvania sees about 6,000. You think we're out in the middle of nowhere? They are really out in the middle of nowhere. And so they see about 6,000 people to a 3-day mountain bike festival. This was the first year they had one in West Virginia. They saw over 1,000 people in the very first year. Just that can change the game. Then this is one of our important pieces, working with rural development agencies for funding for the entrepreneurship. We don't want, it's not saying we'll take them out, but we want the locals to figure out how to create an opportunity for themselves. They know the area, they can capitalize. How do we help them do that? Right? How do we help them do that? People a lot better at it than I am are really kind of thinking through this. I know what bikers and hikers want. I can help with that conversation, but it's others that are really live in that entrepreneurial development world that are focused on that. A couple of success stories. What we're seeing here is Oak Ridge, Oregon. This is a former timber community. They see between $2.3 and $5 million a year just in mountain bike tourism. So we had coal leave, they had timber leave. They focused on trails, that's what they're seeing. Southwestern Ohio, this was interesting, right? Up to a mile away, for every foot closer to the trail, the property increased by $7. So it can make a change in the property value. Locals, I mean, that is somewhat concerning because they increase property tax in some of those, and do they get outpriced? So we're having that as well. Here's the really important piece. When it all comes down to it, recreation resources bring tourism revenues. The greatest value in enhancing the quality of life. That is what it's about. It is not only going to benefit economically, but it's going to change our quality. Not change, but enhance our quality of life. Right? It makes it a desirable place to live, and further development will attract future residents. That's what we want to do. That's how outdoor recreation and ecotourism can be a catalyst for our rural development. I'm going to stop there for a second. I have some more that I can talk about in terms of the winding road and some of the work that's being done with that, but I want to make sure I ask any questions.